Morning, everyone. While folks are dropping in, I'm just going to start with our remarks. So I'm Katie Shorey. Thank you for joining us. We are excited to continue this series. This is our 8th session. These virtual events feature thinkers and doers from across the state who are working on and building awesome companies and products, and also people who are helping to further develop our startup ecosystem. And you know the drill, these sessions would not be possible without our sponsors, Bangor Savings Bank, Maine Technology Institute, and our business news sponsor, Maine Biz. And we are also very excited to be sponsored by Maine Venture Fund. So a quick shout out to our sponsors. For those who don't know, Maine Technology Institute was founded and funded in 1999 by the Maine State Legislature, and they offer grants, loans, equity investments, and services to support Maine's innovation economy. And they support new ideas, products, or methods with the potential to grow and diversify Maine's economy and increase the number of quality jobs. And they also support the innovation economy through event sponsorships like this series. So we thank them. They've been such a supportive partner over the years. To learn more, and if you're eligible for funding, visit mainetechnology.org. We're also supported by the Maine Venture Fund. The mission of MVF is to invest in dynamic businesses that have the potential for significant growth and impact in Maine. And they have invested over 20 million from their fund. So now I'm going to show a brief 30-second video from our sponsor, Bangor Savings Bank. Here we go.
All across New England, business owners are finding new ways to succeed. Families are working hard to provide for their loved ones and their future. It's the spirit of New Englanders that inspires all of us to do more. It's in our employees, our customers, and our communities. Every day we do more. Because at Bangor Savings Bank, we truly believe you matter more.
All righty, there we go. I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest, Krystal Williams, founder and manager of Providentia Group, and also the founder of the nonprofit, the Alpha Legal Foundation. So welcome, Krystal.
Thank you, Katie. It's great to be with you today.
Likewise. So let's jump right in. Tell us about yourself and your story.
Wow. So I hate to drag everyone through my life, but I can't really talk about who I am today without talking about how I grew up, because that really informed who I am and how I want to contribute to Maine's ecosystem. So I am a product of the South. I grew up in North Carolina. I am one of 7 kids. My father was a police officer, and my mom was diagnosed with a mental illness when I was in my early teens. And so she really struggled and continues to struggle with that. And we grew up in a Habitat for Humanity community. So I had, a lot of the double whammies, right? I'm a Black woman from the South, a large family, lower socioeconomic class, and mental health challenges in my family. So there was a lot going on. And, I was the second oldest, but the oldest daughter in my family. So especially having a father who was a police officer and the son of a Baptist minister, let's just say my upbringing was very interesting. But one of the great things about growing up in a Habitat for Humanity community was the diversity. So I lived next door to a Muslim family. I lived across the street from a white family. There was a Filipino family down the street and a Latinx family as well. So we really were like a microcosm of, a melting pot of all of these different races and ethnicities. And we were unified in our struggle, quite frankly. The poverty was our unifier, and there was a lot of love and friendship that was created in that community at that time. And so I really, as I think about where I am now in my life and the kind of contribution that I want to make to Maine, I really think about not only the BIPOC Mainers, but also the rural white Mainers who are not fully plugged into the economic engine of the state. So that's where I grew up. Education was really my path out of poverty. So I had the great fortune of going to some of the best institutions. I went to Williams College for my undergraduate degrees. I have degrees in math and psychology and a minor in African American history from there. And I also have my MBA from Dartmouth. and then my law degree from Maine Law. So I've really been, one, I'm really highly educated. Some might say overeducated, but I've also had the opportunity to be a part of these really amazing, rich intellectual communities. And I've always balance that with real world application. So after my time at Williams, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Dominican Republic as a water sanitation volunteer, building gravity flow water systems and latrines. So I always say, in case of a zombie apocalypse, I am totally your girl. I can go off grid. I know how to do it.
Know this. I'm writing this down.
Yeah. And then of course after business school, I had the fortune of going to John Deere, a Fortune 100 company, in their leadership management program, and I spent almost 12, 13 years there, really getting a 360 view of the business and working in areas as disparate as advanced technology marketing to literally being the third shift supervisor at the largest manufacturing facility and almost everything else in between except engineering. I'm not an engineer, don't pretend to be one, different skill set.
Amazing. So, okay, so then how do we go from there to you've now started two companies. So how did you see a need for both of those? Like take us through that transition.
Yeah. So, so I guess maybe if I could just take a step back and let folks know how I arrived in Maine. I always like to joke that I just quote unquote discovered Maine when I took time off of work to hike the Appalachian Trail. So that it was 10 years ago this year. My summit anniversary. Yeah, the whole AT. And, I was so fortunate. I came through Maine in early fall. My summit anniversary is October 8th. And I fell in love with Maine's woods. And then after I, summited Katahdin, I came and spent a couple of days down in Portland and loved it, loved the energy. And so when I had the opportunity to go to law school, I really wanted to be in a place where I felt like I could bring my whole self. And this, honestly, I will say, of all the places I've lived, being in Maine is the first time that I feel like I can truly be who I am. And and I can give room and pursue all of my disparate interests, which, I kind of look at Dean Softly, who's now Dean of the Law School, former Chief Justice of the Law Court, and I'm like, that right there embodies the spirit of Maine. You make these career shifts and you make it work and people support you in that path. So I saw the need for both the Providentia Group and the Alpha Legal Foundation. Honestly, it had been brewing for a while, but it really came to a head after George Floyd's murder last year. Um, so two things happened. One, some comments were made in the legal community that were really problematic and seemed to suggest that gender discrimination, which is horrible and like all other discrimination should not be occurring, but this person suggested that that was more of an issue in Maine than racial discrimination. And of course, we've heard comments by politicians saying who have said, even politicians in Maine, that systemic discrimination, systemic racism is not a thing. Um, as a Black woman from the South, I can tell you from lived experience, it is absolutely a thing. And so I really saw a need first for the Alpha Legal Foundation to address the issues within the legal community and to recognize and reckon with the particular ways that lawyers and judges have perpetuated and furthered the systemic nature of discrimination throughout our history. And I've just been so encouraged by how many Mainers in the legal community want to have that conversation, and we want to use our powers as lawyers, as officers of the court, to make a change. And for Providentia Group, really for me, I was feeling this incredible tension as I was having conversations about the Alpha Legal Foundation and all of that work. I would be having these rich, engaging conversations about what does the future of Maine look like? How can we make it more inclusive and make sure that as we talk about addressing systemic racism and as we acknowledge the systemic inequities that show up in data that indicate that white Mainers have better outcomes, what we tend to call white privilege, how do we do that in a way that doesn't shame white Mainers and doesn't exclude them from the process and moving forward. So I was having these really incredibly rich conversations, future oriented. And then I would shift my brain and go and work on an energy contract because my trade was as an energy regulatory lawyer. Um, and so it was creating a lot of tension for me because I really wanted to be in this future oriented space and I wanted to start leveraging my business skills again. And so I needed a vehicle that could contain all that I have to offer. You know, like Walt Whitman says, I am large, I contain multitudes. And so after having been a part of two prominent law firms here in Maine, I realized that, you know what, I just need to create something for myself that works for me. And so that was really the genesis of the Providentia Group.
Wow, that's excellent. So who are you serving now? Who are you working with? Just give us a picture of that.
Yep. So of course, I'm going to just kind of bifurcate the organization. So with the Providentia Group, my focus is really on individuals who are new entrepreneurs or who want to be entrepreneurs but haven't yet made that leap. I call them my wannapreneurs. And then I also work with established organizations who are looking to embed DEI principles in their operations. And so I've been incredibly fortunate. On day one of my business, I hired a paralegal because I was really overwhelmed by how many people wanted to engage in this work and who wanted to engage and partner with me in doing this work in their organization. So things have been going really, really well. And for the Alpha Legal Foundation, there are two ways to answer that. The direct beneficiaries of the programming and the mentorship offers in the Alpha Legal Foundation are really aimed at BIPOC attorneys and aspiring attorneys because the goal is to create a more diverse legal system in Maine. But in doing so, that really benefits all of Maine by having more experiences reflected in the courtroom, on the bench. That just brings a greater diversity of thought and thoughtfulness in how the law is administered.
So as I'm listening to all this, I mean, your background and your story is just unbelievable. And I want to be inside your brain for a little bit. Like, just, so can you tell us what it's like a day in the life of, because I see you as an entrepreneur and an ecosystem builder. So you have both of those hats. So just tell me what it's like and what kind of like I know that no 2 days are the same. So.
Yeah, and that is absolutely true. No 2 days are the same, but I would say there's a typical rhythm through the days, to the days, I would say. So yesterday, I guess one thing I didn't mention is I'm also chairwoman of Kenotech, who is, yeah. And Kenotech is doing amazingly well right now. We're about to go out for the equity raise and things look very promising. And we actually had a board meeting yesterday. So my day was participating in equity conversations around various topics for most of the morning, working with my paralegal to make sure that we were aligned on objectives for the day, doing some work on a pro bono asylum client that I have, talking with some people about and thinking about how to reach more BIPOC individuals who want to start businesses or who may not have been thinking about it, but who really have the skill set to do well at it. And then I would like to say I'm ending the day with my Kenotech board meeting, but then I have a whole bunch of other stuff at night where I'm doing all of the administrative stuff of my business, catching up on meetings that I missed. So I'm also a board member of the Maine ACLU, and I wasn't able to make a meeting yesterday, so catching up on those things and responding to emails. So it spans the gamut, but it's always client work. How do we build and support the ecosystem, particularly for BIPOC Mainers? Doing how do I support the organizations that I'm a part of, like Kenotech. I will also give a shout out to Stash Up. I'm a part of their team as well. And that is a very diverse, exciting, organization that is growing. So a lot of things.
I just learned about them and just, gave them a shout out on LinkedIn. It'll be really exciting to see how they evolve. There's so many exciting.
There's a lot going on.
You saw the Techstars announcement yesterday.
Yes, very excited about that. So
if folks haven't heard about that yet, go go check out Maine Startups Insider uh, article yesterday that came out about the Techstars story. Very exciting. Well, so speaking about all the, all the different organizations and resources in Maine, have you utilized any or partnered with any? What's working? So just curious your
Yeah.
thoughts.
So, gosh, I have utilized some resources. It's interesting because when I first came to Maine, my thought was, how can I serve? I have all of this business experience, and my skill is really in helping businesses scale. So I became involved with MTI and MXG, Maine Accelerates Growth, very early in my time here in Maine. So I've always been on the organizational development, capacity building side of things. But more recently, I've started approaching projects as a participant. So, as an example, I went through the Propeller program that is offered by CEI's Women's Business Center, that is run by Anna Ackerman, who is a really lovely person. So shout out to her. And it's co-led by Nick Remsa at Tortoise Labs, who is just a stellar human being. So both of them love them dearly, and they just bring such great positive and supportive energy to people who are in the very early stages of thinking about what it could be like, what life could be like as an entrepreneur. I also, kind of someone I consider my partner in crime who goes way back is Martha Bentley. I think she's a well-known figure. And we actually met this weekend for a socially distanced hike and just, got into good trouble as we were thinking about where the state could go. And I would say more recently, actually, as a result of the series that you've been doing, Eric Moody and I, so Eric from Multitrack Studios, who's currently living in Florida, he reached out to me and he was like, hey, I see you're on, you're the next speaker, and let's talk about how we can collaborate. So, one of the things I love about Maine's ecosystem is you really are only 1 or 2 degrees away from the assistance that you need. And sometimes when you're really lucky, people just reach out to you and say like, hey, I see you might need some help here. How can I be of service? And that's the spirit I bring to things. And so it's great to see that reciprocated.
I hear you on that. So let's talk a bit about, because I see you, I mean, I know you're very practical, but I also see you as a visionary too, and just some of the things that you're envisioning for Maine and for the line of work you're in. So what are you most excited about? Just given all the things you have your hands in, what are you excited about?
Wow. There is so much because I do have my hands in quite a few things. Sometimes it's overwhelming. I am, if I can, I'll try to limit it to 3 things. I am really excited about some of the high tech startups that are really starting to gain attention, that I know of, that I'm a part of, that I have friends who are really moving forward. Obviously, with my role at Kinotech, I love those guys. And I will say that um, the way they approached looking for a board chair, like they were very intentional. Yes, I have a unique background that makes me particularly well suited, but the fact of the matter was is that they were looking for a BIPOC person, preferably a woman, to sit in that seat. And so like kudos to them for being forward thinking, and for not as a bunch of young men in the tech world, it's so easy to fall into to like bro culture, but they have really intentionally built a diverse team and are looking to diversify it more. So really love working with Justin and David and all the Keynote Tech team. Um, so that, just the whole high tech entrepreneurial space is something I'm really excited about. Something else I'm excited about is how many people I've been speaking with recently who all similarly see Maine being uniquely positioned to model for the rest of the nation how to do things differently and how to move forward in an inclusive way. Um, and that honestly is something that I believe so strongly in. I believe Maine's demographics, Maine's culture, that kind of we can do this, that bootstrapping, and also that sense of being a large town. No matter, like, despite the large geography of Maine, you really are so close to other people. And so that makes things possible in Maine that are not possible in other places. So that's incredibly exciting. And I think the other thing that I'm really excited about is just personally the opportunities that exist in growing my business. So I will just say, like, in working with Eric over the past week or so, like, he's really, like, some of the questions he's really asked me have really forced me to stop playing small because, again, like, moving beyond limiting beliefs for some people like myself is a lifelong journey. And so it has been interesting as I've been interacting with people to realize that there have been, even as I've started my own company and have been empowered through that process, that I was still limiting how I could grow my business and how successful and impactful it could be. So shout out again to Eric for helping me over that mental hurdle. So yeah, and so was that, I think those were three things. So I lost track.
No, that was great. And so thinking about that, I mean, your limiting beliefs, do you feel that a lot of people just get stuck in that zone of just not thinking big enough, or they just like don't realize their true potential? Is that kind of is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that's true. And for all that is wonderful and great about Maine, I think is some of the things that are challenging, there are two in particular that I'm thinking of, but one is I think we in Maine don't realize the full potential of what what is possible both from a business perspective as well as from a societal perspective. And so we have the ability to push the envelope and we don't do it enough. And so that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about some of the conversations I'm in, because more people are recognizing this unique moment in time and Maine's unique position to push the envelope in a very equity forward way. And I do want to just highlight this one thing is that for one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this is that Maine has done this before. The first Black lawyer in the United States became a lawyer here in Maine in 1844, Macon Bowling Allen. That is not part of the narrative of the legal history of the state, and I feel like that is such an oversight. That was a fact that I stumbled across during my first year at Maine Law, and I have just been like telling everyone, I'm like, did you know this? You need to know this. This is part of our history. So I really say that to say, like, Maine has had moments in history where it has really led the country. And I think that we have that opportunity now again, and we have the resources, we have the intellectual horsepower, we have capital in the state. It's not proportionately distributed, but we have people who do have deep pockets who are very invested in these issues. And it's so great to engage them in conversation to say, how can we move forward and how do you want to be a part of that? And the other thing that I think that it's important to think about and do a better job of is engaging the BIPOC community in that. So again, that goes back to the economic engine of Maine doesn't work for everyone. And this is as true for rural Mainers as it is for BIPOC Mainers. I am a tech advisor. One of the other hats I wear is a tech advisor for MTI. And I have seen some amazing projects go through the MTI granting process. And I'm so glad that MTI exists as a funding mechanism for those projects. Those projects are not led by BIPOC individuals. And very few women, at least in the sector that I represent, am I seeing, women-led projects go through. So it's MTI is a wonderful mechanism. How do we make sure that more people have access to it? And this is an issue that continues to perpetuate itself, because as long as the state is really focused on 7 particular sectors, it excludes a lot of people. I was just looking at those sectors the other day. I was looking at the statute. I was like, you know what? These are not sectors that a lot of BIPOC people play in terms of when they think about starting their own businesses. So part of what I'm thinking through and talking with people about is, how do we start, rustling the bushes, getting, making those connections, creating those pathways to the resources that exist to fund entrepreneurs. So we just need to, I think, be more intentional and be more tactical in how we're reaching out to BIPOC communities, because the history of this country requires that we support those communities differently.
Yes.
So sorry, I just totally got off on a soapbox.
No, you didn't. I wanted to, I mean, And we have a few minutes left. So if anyone has a question, hopefully we can get to it. You can drop it in the Q&A because I'm coming up on my last big question for Krystal here. But in our prep call, we talked about that there are all these exciting things happening in Maine, but there's more that needs to be done to move the needle, and just some big ideas that you'd like to see. And we talked about investors really being intentional about investing in BIPOC communities, but those communities don't always have the risk profile to start anyway. So it's like you're starting behind. So can we talk a bit about just about that and the risk profile? Because I think when we were talking about that, it really, it was helpful for me. So can we talk a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, so just kind of calming my own thoughts, statistically speaking, and I'll just use blacks because just to keep the example very succinct, blacks have about a tenth of the wealth as a white American. A black American has about a tenth of the wealth as white American. So that creates a very different type of risk profile when you think about, can I actually afford to fail? Do I have a safety net? And just getting really personal for a moment, when, I've always known I wanted to start my own business from a very young age. But even when I was at, a very well-paying Fortune 100 company job, I was supporting a lot of my family members. I did not have the emotional capacity or the financial capacity to go off and do something on my own. I considered it a luxury. And some of that is a limiting belief. Some of that is the reality of, not only do I not have a safety net, I am actually the safety net for other people. And so when that is the case, you tend to have a very tactical view of life. You tend to say, like, what do I need to do for this next season or to get over the next crisis? And that doesn't really give you the space to think about what your life could be like or look like if you were to start your own company and have greater economic agency. And that is very real. Of course, there are always exceptions to the rule, but as I think about how I want to support Maine and specifically the BIPOC community in Maine, this is an opportunity for me to use my educational privilege and all of the spaces that I get to occupy and begin to bridge those gaps and to create pathways for other members of the BIPOC community, because I still, like, my family still owns that Habitat for Humanity house in North Carolina. Like, a lot of the things that my family struggled with when I was a teenager, those are still dynamics in my family today. And so, like, I am not divorced from that struggle. And because of that, I believe I have a unique ability to enter into communities, enter into the struggles that people are facing on a daily level, and provide them a high level of tactical support to help them bridge the gap to a better and a future where they have more economic agency. Also because I'm involved in MTI and all of these other resources, so I can make that connection. That's my hope, that's my intention, and I can't wait to keep working on it.
Awesome. If we have in 20 seconds, do you see Maine as having the potential to lead the country in education innovation? And do you see any other sectors that you have the potential in? And then, and then we're almost at time. Sorry if I didn't get to the question.
Yeah, I actually do. And the education sector is something that I'm super passionate about because I'm also on the board of the Learner Foundation that does a lot of work in education in rural communities. And I think is doing a really great job of raising the aspirations of rural Mainers in particular. So I think the education sector is super important as we think about going forward. There are a lot of great things going on in Maine right now around education. And we're out of time, so maybe I can come back. I'm just going to invite myself back.
So 2 quick things, folks, Krystal, if people wanted to get in touch with you or follow up, how can they do that?
Yep, providentiagroup.com or alphalegalfoundation.com. Also, you can shoot me an email at kwilliams@providentiagroup.com.
Awesome. And our next event is a special conversation with the Maine Angels and demystifying angel investing. So we have 2 Maine Angels that are going to be speaking with us on March 9th. So I'm very excited for that. Stay tuned for details. Krystal, I want to thank you so much for your time and really appreciate you being on this series. And thank you so much for all that you're doing in Maine.
Thanks, Katie. This was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.